back to another YouTube version of Why Do I Care podcast. So today we will be discussing the 2024 election. If you haven't listened to the newest episode of Why Do I Care, 100% do it. It's about Joe Biden officially announcing his candidacy for president of the United States. But we're going to use, 270 to win, the map, Electoral College, to kind of get a little bit more knowledge on what is happening and what it is looking like. Of course, this is all just like guesswork at effectively at this point because the election is over a year and a half away, and we don't even know who Joe Biden will be running against. For this video, we will be assuming Donald Trump because he's declared and Ron DeSantis is not declared yet. So for now, we will be assuming that it's a Trump-Biden rematch, but then again, that can change at any time. And all of these predictions are likely to change at any time because that's how predictions work. Jumping right into it, what do you see here? Right here, this is the map. This is the Electoral College map. Every state has electoral votes, and you need 270 to become the next president of the United States. Some of them are already filled out. These are the states that have been voted the exact same since 2020. However, we are going to remove Texas, and I'm going to talk about why. So, this is Biden's approval rating. This is 538. These are his approval ratings. He is around 50% for disapproval and around 45% for approval. And this is among likely or registered voters. If we go to all polls, the margin becomes larger against him, but those people don't vote. So it's not important to kind of see where they're feeling when we're talking about elections. We see here that it really has been getting much closer because what we see up here, what is this? This is kind of a combination of all these polls, right? Down here, this is the most recent poll, and this is another recent poll. So if we look at these two polls, because they're the most recent, we see that Biden is definitely kind of catching up, and it's making a big difference. But then if we go down a little bit to kind of earlier in April, we see that there's big disapproval numbers. There are big disapproval numbers. But then if we look at kind of the pollsters, you see these are not necessarily rated as well as these top two. So that's why we're kind of focusing on these two. But then also if we're looking at the sample, these are the likely voters and these are registered voters. So the most important that we're going to look at is this middle one. Not because the numbers are favorable for Biden, but because they are likely voters from a good polling organization. The reason that it's so important to have likely voters and not registered voters is because there are so many registered voters that don't vote. And likely voters, it's how it sounds. They are very likely to vote. That being said, the Biden approval +3 is only going to go up the closer we get to the election. You see here, these numbers don't add up, right? We see here that they needed to be adjusted for the result. These numbers got adjusted. All these get adjusted, and that's because it's polling, and polling is just basically guesswork, right? You're trying to make the best prediction that you can, but it's not always accurate. So his numbers are going to get much stronger the closer we get because there will be paid messaging. Hopping back over here, we're just going to fill out some states, some kind of likely what's going to happen. It's fairly safe to assume that Colorado and New Mexico will be going to the Democrats along with New Hampshire. And we can also categorize for the Republicans. We can give them Indiana, Ohio, and Iowa. Those are the safest. Those are the safest. When we hop over to some of the Senate election results, and especially look at the comparison, the reason that we go over to these results is because we don't know what is happening. We don't know what will happen because so much has changed in 4 years. 2020, this is the closest, and these usually are stronger numbers for Republicans. And we see here that there was a bunch of shifts for Republicans in not as many swingy states, but in the swing states, they did fantastically well. Arizona and Nevada, especially, these are two very, very close races, and those are going to be two very, very important swing states. House, it's going to be helpful for some of the Nebraska, for example. We see that Nebraska, it was very, very close for District 2, very close for District 2. So then keeping that in mind, when we go over here, we have, this is a special, Nebraska is not winner take all in Nebraska and Maine like it is usually. Nebraska second, based off of what we did see, it's going to be very close, but odds are it will go to the Democrats. Why? Why will it go to the Democrat even though the Republican won it in 2022? Because that was an incumbent, and incumbencies have a lot of power. I would be more confident giving it to Donald Trump or whoever the Republican would be if this margin was a whole lot larger. You want large margins when you have an incumbent, especially in a swingy state, in a swingy district. It was only about 6,000 votes. Those votes are so important. If you are an incumbent, you have so much power, especially in the House, to get your message out. That's why I'll be willing to give this to Joe Biden and the Democrats. Now we can do the same for Maine's 2nd district, right? If we go over here, we hop over here, we go to Maine. This is the Maine 2nd district. This is something that I would like to see more of, right? This is an incumbent that did win by 6 points. And for that reason, I think that Joe Biden would also be able to carry the Maine 2nd. Now, these are some of the bigger states. These are some states that it is very important to look at the Senate, because the Senate is a good indicator right here. Georgia, if we look even from 2020, some of the most important locations that Biden needs to win, right? These are places that, I'll show you the size of the lead, but around Atlanta, this is good. There's more, Fulton especially, around Savannah, around these larger cities that usually vote for Democrats. This is where he can raise his numbers, and he was able to do that. See, around cities, where Democrats do well are almost always around cities. And because he was able to do that so effectively, I think as of now, it's looking pretty good for Joe Biden to carry Georgia, especially considering the meddling that Donald Trump did in Fulton County. He is a lot of bad press for him down there. A lot of bad press. Florida, I think, should be pretty safe for the Republican this go around, right? It's been kind of swingy-ish, but then definitely more in recent years has definitely taken the jump and gone to the Republicans more often than not. And if it's Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump like lives there in Mar-a-Lago, and Ron DeSantis is the governor there. So it's not looking good. Right? It's not looking good if you're the Democrats. Virginia, this is one that is very, very interesting. That is interesting because it used to be it shifted to definitely something that Democrats could start to count on a little bit more. But then in 2021, you can see there was this big shift all over that caused the Republican candidate, Junkie, to win. It was a very, very close election, and it happens in 2021 with kind of this big economy and this more reactionary, we don't like Biden as much as we thought we would, right? This is November. This is about 1 year after he won. This is a campaign that gave Republicans a lot of hope, but banking on it may not be I don't want to say a safe bet because it's still something significant that happens. But then if we go to the 2020 comparison, especially in the House, and we go to Virginia, we try to zoom into Virginia here, we can see that all around where you're supposed to kind of get these margins, you're supposed to try to win big if you're a Democrat, right? You see, they are able to do so, especially around all of these. And then the shift that you see, it was a very, very small shift compared to the governor race, which was definitely a much larger shift. That is why I think that Joe Biden will be able to carry Virginia. We're going to hop down to North Carolina right now, right? We're going to go back. We're going to go over to the Senate, and we're going to go down here because in North Carolina, there was a Senate race, and the Republican won pretty handedly. Compared to 2020, they increased their margins. The size of the lead was not large enough where Democrats need it to be. That is why I think that Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis will be able to carry North Carolina. Nevada's one that has been it's very interesting to look at because it definitely had it was much closer than a lot of people kind of were hoping on. If you were a Democrat, you did not want it to be this close, right? You definitely did not want it to be this close. We sit down here. Clark County is very big. This is where Cortez Masto can drive up the margins, and then up here, this is also where she can drive up the margins because not many people live in all the other areas. Size of the lead, you can kind of see this is where, especially down here, especially in Clark County, this is where Cortez Masto was able to pull ahead because there's just not as many people living here. See, look, White Pine County, it looks like he won by a lot, but in reality, he won by 2,000 votes compared to over here where she won by 53,000 votes. And that's why it's very important. And we look at the 2020 comparison, all of them did shift over a little bit. And that is considering the Republicans are just stronger there and they almost very strong Republican year and still able to fend off. That is why I think that it would go to Joe Biden and the Democrats. Now, here are some of the swingiest of swing states, except for Texas. We're going to talk about Texas. Why is Texas even here? Because it was considered very close for some time, right? But if we go to the governor election results and we go down and we try to find Texas, it definitely was not as close as many people wanted it to be. It was close at a time, right? There was a time in which Beto was able to challenge Ted Cruz and get it within 5 points. But Greg Abbott just completely dismantled him. Where if you are a Democrat, you need to win definitely up around Dallas and definitely around Houston and San Antonio. But then you also need to win right down here, right along the border with Mexico. That's where you need to win. And Beto is just not able to do it. Beto has been kind of the Texas Stacey Abrams for some time. And it seems like there was a good chance that he would be able to unseat whoever the Republican would be, but Greg Abbott was just too much. And Greg Abbott is one of the more popular governors. You should expect some money here because if you look at the map right now, Democrats, if they win Texas, they get the presidency. It's that simple. That's all they need because there's so many electoral votes. So if you are a Democratic strategist, you should be putting money there because if you flip Texas, it frees up your map and you are able to afford to lose some of the smaller states. However, Republicans still do have a stronghold on it, and especially if it's Ron DeSantis, you should be seeing them able to win this. These 4 states are the states that are going to make or break the election. We're going to start with Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, this is one that was very interesting to watch and was very closely watched in the Senate election, right? If we go to Pennsylvania, John Fetterman was able to beat Oz, and this is where kind of the election or the Senate, the balance of the Senate kind of swung. He was able to drive up his margins in Pittsburgh and in Philly. It's that simple. If you are a Democrat, you need to win the big cities, and he was able to do that. Compared to 2020, there was a shift. In a year that was bad for Democrats, a year that historically the party in power loses seats, loses senators, they were able to do this. John Fetterman was able to do this against Oz, who was not a good candidate, but these numbers should be very convincing. That is why, as of now, I think that the Democrats can hold on to Pennsylvania. They only need 2. They only need 1. Let's look at the others. Arizona. Who will win Arizona? We're going back. We're going back to Arizona. This was one of the most popular kind of senators, still was able to defy what everyone thought was going to happen. They were able to win, especially Maricopa County. That's a big one. Was able to win and drive up their numbers. Mark Kelly was able to win. But even more kind of, I don't want to say important than Mark Kelly. The governorship, Katie Hobbs was able to win because Katie Hobbs was not an incumbent. And that is why this is so, so important. Katie Hobbs and Carrie Lake is about as close to what we can see. These two candidates were very kind of Trump and Biden-y. And she was able to win in a year that was bad for Democrats. We're supposed to be bad for Democrats. The economy has gotten better. Inflation has gone down. All these kind of conflicts that we kind of had have been more taken a back burner. That is why, as of now, I think Arizona should be marked safe for the Democrats. Now for Michigan and Wisconsin, these two very close to each other, but they are obviously, different states. So are they going to vote together? Probably not. Wisconsin. Let's go to Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a state that was much closer than people kind of thought. Mandela Barnes was able to get really close to Ron Johnson, and for a time it looked like they might be able to kind of pull an upset, but that did not happen. And if we look at this comparison, there was this shift. And the Democrats were just not able to do enough in the places that they needed to. They were not able to do enough, especially in Milwaukee County. And if you were a Democrat, you should look at this and you should feel hopeful. You should be like, hey, this is looking really good. That is why, as of now, Joe Biden should be able to win Wisconsin. These are all states in which the margins are so small. It's almost insane that you see here 20,000 votes can shift who wins Wisconsin. These margins are so small. But we also see in special elections, the Democrat is able to win. Governor, we're going to hop over to Michigan. We're going to see Gretchen Whitmer absolutely dismantle. This wasn't even really close. It was just an absolute crushing. Whitmer is one of the most talented Democratic politicians, and first-term Democrat was still able to just absolutely cruise to a victory. If these numbers were closer, I would be definitely more concerned. But Michigan, as of now, is looking like a safer Biden kind of keep. This is the prediction that I have as of now. This is 100% going to change, and I'm going to eat my words, right? But how do we get here? We got here because Democrats overperformed. They broke history. They defied history in 2022. They were not supposed to win. They were not supposed to keep the House. They were not supposed to expand their majority in the Senate. They were not supposed to expand the majority of the Senate. And while they did not end up keeping the House because they weren't supposed to keep the House, they were able to keep it so slim that Republicans have been having a very difficult time getting anything done. The numbers for Biden do not look fantastic. However, they are getting better, and they are going to keep getting better. And this is around where Biden was in July. This is where he was in the midterms, right? The midterms that we just looked at. This is where he was in the midterms with 9. And then look, he's getting more popular. He is more popular now than he was when Democrats were able to defy history in what is kind of where the party in power almost always loses. This is it for the YouTube edition of Why Do I Care? Thank everyone so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like, comment, all of that stuff. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great rest of your day.